Slide is visible to everyone. If camera is blocking your view, you can come forward, or you can sit here. That's okay. Am I audible to the last row? Yes, clear and loud. Okay, that's good. Should we start? Okay. All are comfortable in English, or should I change it to Gujarati or Hindi? I'm comfortable with all three languages. All are comfortable with English. If someone has problem with English, I can change to Hindi or Gujarati. Okay, fine. Okay, let's continue in English. If someone has any question anytime, feel free to raise your hand. Don't sit like you are sitting in school or college. We are professionals, so there can be some queries which can be answered on the spot, so you can understand the next step better. So let me start with my introduction first. My name is Chintan Shah. I'm working as team lead at Pawan's group. I'm working there as Flutter developer, Android developer, and iOS developer. Yes, I work on all three. Basically, my current job status is managing those projects right now. I don't do much development nowadays, but yes, still I do some coding whenever time permits me. But Flutter, I started Flutter in 2018, so it's 5 years now. You all may have started like 1 or 2 years ago. I started Flutter 5 years ago with the GDG team only, when we have developed one Flutter app to just demonstrate how powerful Flutter is at that time on the GDG event. So I came to know about Flutter in 2018 only, but 5-6 months back, when there was International Women's Day celebration ongoing, and one of my GDG friend came to me. He has some Flutter demo app installed on his phone and was showing that, see this is the Flutter that is coming to, tomorrow. And I have just heard about Flutter, that there is something called Flutter. I don't know anything. What is Flutter? How it works? What are the advantages? I didn't know anything about it. Even I don't know how the logo looks like. So when he demonstrated me that, if he has not declared that this is Flutter app, I would have convinced that this is an Android app. And that time, the Flutter technology was in alpha state. So you can consider that when some technology is alpha state and it can convince you that it looks like native Android, just consider after 5 years now how performant the app is, okay, or how performant the SDK is. So my topic for choosing today is optimizing a Flutter app. Now you will realize that Flutter is meant to be fast. Yeah. Have you heard about how Flutter is developed? If not, then I have some bonus things to share today, but if time permits, we will do it after the session. So I will discuss more about it if time permits at the time. But Flutter was mainly developed to consider that it renders the fast UI. That was the main objective of the Flutter developers, engineers who developed this SDK. So even though Flutter is so fast, its animations are so smooth, its rendering is so smooth compared to other third-party SDKs which provide the similar functionality. So why still, whenever you develop Flutter apps, it sometimes lags. It sometimes doesn't perform up to the mark. If you are professional developers, you get the idea that how sometimes it's not working as you expected. So how many of you are professional here, like working at the moment? Only few. Okay, you guys must be. Okay. And how many if you are working on like Flutter? Okay. So rest, I am considering all our students. Yes, right. Okay. So I think 3rd year or 2nd year. Yes. Okay. So how many of you have ever tried to run a Flutter app? Even it's a demo app, that's okay. Just this section. Okay. Okay. So you must have tried something. How many of you have tried some complex things in Flutter, like developing a production level app or trying some more complex examples? Only one. Okay, so the professionals who are working on Flutter, aren't they doing? Okay. Yes. No, sometimes happens that you don't get that project that has so much complexity. Okay, that's fine. Feel free to enjoy the session. Don't just switch kite. If you want to have some joke to crack in between, feel free to do that. If you have joke on me, please feel free to crack it. It's okay. So even though, let me continue onto my main topic. Even though Flutter is so smooth, so so dynamic on uses, still the performance is not up to the mark sometimes. The reason is we don't know how to use it efficiently. It effortlessly work, but it's up to you that how you use it. If I give you a Swiss knife, have you heard about Swiss knife? It's a knife which has 10, 15 tools inside one knife. Have you heard about that Swiss knife? If I give it to you, if you don't know how to use all those 15 functions, will you use it correctly? No. So even though you have one single object that can do multiple things, you will still use one or two which you are aware about, right? So that's the point here. Because you don't know how Flutter can be optimized, how the way Flutter works, it's impossible to optimize your way of doing Flutter. So that's why I've chosen this topic because that's a pain point for me as well when I'm managing projects, when my juniors works on Flutter projects. It's pain point for everyone who is looking for a performant app. If it's just okay for you to just develop it and release it, that's not for you. If you want to make it performant, if you want to save 1 millisecond of the user, then this is for you. Yeah, so 1 millisecond, why I'm asking 1 millisecond optimization is also good, because that 1 millisecond of optimization at one place, if you continue over the period of, like, consider that someone uses your app 2 minutes whenever they open your app. So in 2 minutes, how many milliseconds you have wasted? It should be in seconds, right? If you sum it up, you have wasted 5, 10 seconds of a user's life. Why? When you can optimize it. Yeah, please come. So that's why I selected this topic. Now, enough introduction on the first slide. Have you heard about Dash? Dash, there is a bird when you see the Dart and Flutter. Have you seen the Dash? I don't use Dash. I have created my own version. I call it Flutterio. So it's my character. Whenever I use to do presentation on Flutter, I use this character, and I change his attire whenever the season is there. So it's rainy season, so I change this attire. So I love this character because this gives me a friendly feel to the Flutter. It gives me a friendly environment when I work with Flutter. And that's why I would like to continue with this logo rather than the original logo. Okay. So why Flutter optimization is important? This is the most important question that you should ask, like, why should I even care? If it's lagging, that's okay. That's not my fault. That's not my fault. That's the biggest problem that we face. Because no one is ready to take that call that, okay, I want to optimize. I want to make it optimize. That's not what we are doing right now. What our job is on the professional level is, someone has given me this task, I have to achieve it, just achieve it anyhow and done it. So that's the mentality of Flutter developers nowadays, because they just start with basic tutorials and they think that they are Flutter experts. But starting with something and becoming expert is a totally different thing. You have to go deep dive into the Flutter SDKs to know that. So the first reason why should we focus is because everyone is complaining Flutter apps are slow. I already explained the reason, because we are not doing it correctly. That's why the Flutter apps are slow. But otherwise, Flutter apps are the fastest apps, the fastest SDK that you can develop on mobile. I can assure you that. So next is, the most important for me is app runs your main business. So what does this mean? So consider that there is an app which has some website as well. It's just a helping app. For example, Google Chat application, for example. Mostly people do Google Meet, but sometimes they use Google Chat. So Google Chat is not that prominent app that you will use for chat application. Or consider Google's help app on your app, on your phone. So how many times will you use it? Sometimes. So if those kind of apps are there, then you can call whether to do optimization or not. But when your app is your main business, like Zomato and Swiggy, like Uber and Ola, when your app is the main business, if your app is not performing, your business won't perform correctly. Consider that you want to order pizza on Zomato or Swiggy, whatever app you choose. And after spending 1-2 minutes on it, it feels laggy, it doesn't work perfectly, it takes time to load something, it hangs your phone, it takes battery too much. Will you use that app again? No. Definitely you will think about your phone first rather than the experience. So if experience is not good, what will you do? You will lose your customer. If you lose your customer, you will lose your business and ultimately profit. So if your app runs your business, that's an important part of your product or business part, then you must optimize as required. Okay. So there are two things that affects the most. One is time and one is space. So time is how much time it takes to render a screen, how much time it takes to complete the animation, how much time it takes to do something that is intended to do by a user when user clicks something. So that's what time optimization is, and there are a lot of issues with the time. And there is a space, like your app size is too big, your app is not performing well on the low dem devices. Generally we heard that whenever I discuss with some Flutter developer and when I use their apps, it's not perfectly working, even though Android or iOS app. When I ask them why it's so slow, and their answer is it's working fine on my phone. Because they are using 4 GB, 6 GB high-end devices, it works smoothly because they have more power to do complex operations. But when I use it on my old phone, it doesn't work. Okay, so my first impression is if the app doesn't work on all the devices efficiently, I'm not saying that it works same on all devices, but if not working optimized way or efficiently on all devices, then something wrong with your code. And I always try to highlight that part, that you should focus on that part. So that is about space, like how much memory it uses, how much space it occupies when app is running on your phone or when its app is installed. Like if you open some social media app, it takes 500 MB on your device. 500 MB is a lot of space. It's half GB. Consider the old phones that has only 15, 16 GB available, and along with that OS takes some part of it. So just consider how bad your app will perform on those devices. So let's talk one by one about those topics. First is time. So time related topics are mostly Django. Now this word is not old much. Like if we talk about the English language history, Django is few years back when it coined up mostly. So Django means I'm doing this. This is Django. Like you are trying to say something, but you are missing something in between because it doesn't have process to complete that part. So let's consider in a Flutter way. So let me give you a disclaimer here first, that all these examples are available on Flutter website, Flutter YouTube channels, everywhere. So why you should attend even this? Whatever I am going to show you, if you just Google it, you will get it on first 5 results only. So why I'm here to share this? Those will give you the knowledge, but if you have any query, there is no way back. So this is your chance that you will see this on internet as well. But if you have any query, you can ask me. So I can clear those doubts, right? So this is the advantage of having community and having those sessions here, even though all the things are available online. Because whenever I read this, I always have a question, why is this? Why is this? Why isn't this way? Why is it not that way? I always have a question. I stop the topic there and just start again on that search part, why it is that like. Okay, so let's come to this. These slides are all taken from YouTube videos of Flutter official channels only. Some official websites of Flutter, from some good blogs of Flutter. So you will find it easily on the internet. Why I am doing this? I always believe in not reinventing the wheel. If someone has already done some code, already done some research, why shouldn't we use it? Why should we do extra time from our side to just get it right? Because we already know that if you touch the wire, you will get electric short. Why should I try it again? I know that it will give me shock. Why should I try it and touch it again? That's foolishness, yeah? So I always try to get the content from internet and try to make it in a way that people understand it. So that's why I've taken those things. So let's consider that the upper part is a rectangle that is rotating, you are animating. And consider this dotted vertical lines as your frame. So each vertical line means there is a single frame that is being drawn by Flutter. And the green part indicates that how much processing time it has taken to draw that particular frame. Okay? So this is a normal scenario where if you render something, it takes this much amount of time to like process that particular animation or to redrawing that part. Now what is Django is, or what is frame missing, we call it, we miss some frames. So what does that mean? So consider that that's 0.2 milliseconds. It is taking 0.7 milliseconds, okay, just for example, or 7 milliseconds. So that 7 milliseconds in between that duration, there are 3 frames pass of Flutter rendering because Flutter rendering is continuous. But Flutter has developed in a way that if nothing to do on those frames, it quits silently. Those rendering threads just do it nothing at that moment, and it saves the memory on the phone. So if you want to do some, then you have to optimize it. So what does this means? That this particular frame rendering of your screen is taking 7 milliseconds, and in that duration, 3 frames are passed. Because there are 3 frames passed, it is doing the same thing on UI thread. How many of you know what is UI thread? Okay, only 1 person? 2? Okay, so let me just briefly clear you on that. What's UI thread? Whenever you do some programming, it runs on thread. Thread means just consider a highway where multiple cars are passing by. Okay, what if one car stops the road? If one big truck stops the road, all the back traffic will be stopped and stuck there, right? This is the same thing. So consider thread as a highway. If small cars and passing by some distance, then all smooth, all can go on the same speed. As per the previous slide, that the highway, consider this is a highway, and this all green dots are the cars. So if they have enough space in between, they can go easily, right? Now consider this highway that this big truck is blocking the road. If that is blocking the road, means all other cars behind that truck will be blocked, right? So whenever the 3 frames are trying to do some rendering, you have already occupied that road to do some processing. That's why those frames are missed. Because it can't wait for the next thread to render. It just keep that frame, let you do the completion. It will check again, okay, memory available, not available. Let's keep that as well. Next, available, yes, now do the rendering. Now consider that you are rotating something on very high speed, then you will start seeing the lags. Okay, this is how it works. So this is called jank. So another issue with maybe your, there is no jank, like it completes the processing between the 2 frames, but it may take memory a lot. Like you are doing some heavy operations on rendering your UI, or doing something like doing some calculations, then it can take your battery too. Now consider how. Consider this highway again. Now this car is taking this much amount of time, like it occupies all the time between the next frame rendering occurs, right? So if it takes all that time, it doesn't look bad on UI because it's still rendering all the frames. So it looks smooth, but it will drain your battery fast. Why? Because it is using more CPU than it's required. Are you getting? Or any question here? No? Okay. So that's all about time. Now second issue that I feel that Flutter has solved now, before it was an issue, is app size is too big. If you are a native developer of Android and iOS, the app size relatively are small if you develop the exact same app on Flutter and iOS and Android, right? So why it is? Because it contains a lot of binary codes that runs on Android and iOS. It has platform specific codes as well. Now Flutter has optimized in a way that it divides the code that this is required for iOS only, don't ship it with Android. This kind of optimization they have done recent years, and due to that the app size is decreased. But still is a lot of size when you develop a normal Flutter app without any optimization. So that's the biggest concern, that you should keep it in as small as possible, If you always think about your target audience. In Pawan's group, we have developed RTO exam app. Maybe some of you use for your license test practice. Those apps are developed by our company and mostly by me. So our target was to keep it under 10 MB. So for certain years, it was a native Android app, we always try to keep it under 10 MB. Why? Because all the users can be from any range, like a village user with a small RAM device to a smart city user with a high-end internet and high-end device. So we have to target all those audience, and that's why we always try to keep it below 10 MB. Because now there are advancements, it's now more than 15 MB, but still we try to manage it around 10 to 20 MB still now with all the functionality. So why it is important? Because if your end user is not going to use your app, how will you generate your revenue? So you have to think about your target audience, and if you have to take advantage of the user's device full potential, then you can use it. Like you can take big memory chips there and it's okay for you. But because your target audience is only high device and high-end users only, right? So this is main concern that you should always think and always try to reduce. How will you reduce? I will explain later. Okay, and another space issue is the loading time. So your app, it relates with the time, but consider that your device is taking so much RAM. I'm not talking about the memory that takes after installation. I'm talking about the memory that it uses when you are using the app. So there are limited RAMs available on some devices. So when you try to do something, app just get freeze because there is no enough RAM to do your complex operations. So these are the issues. Okay, so let's come to some solutions. So what are the big basic mistakes that every Flutter developer does? Like I have seen this with almost every developer I work with, even I have also done similar mistakes when I started with Flutter, right? So first is GetWidget method. Now what is GetWidget method? Let me show you an example. Consider that you are designing some UI. What we generally do as a beginner developer, we create a function, let return home screen, for example, and it develops all that UI inside that function and returns a widget. So it's a return type, it's widget. So consider that you have a button. So you create a helper class, like you want to do some scalable product. So what you will do if you want to design one button, you will create a helper class, a method which will return primary button. Like for example, a primary button is blue. So you don't want to do the code again and again on professional level. So what will you do? Create a function and get the blue button widget from it and use it, right? That's what many developers do. This is a problem here. Why this is a problem? When you are working with lists. For example, I don't know if it has any pointer, I don't know. Okay, let me show you. So here, consider this is a list view. On the top part, you are rendering 10,000 list items. Okay, so there's a 10,000 widgets for sure, right? Now in 10,000 widgets, if consider that I am returning a widget of a list item, right? Inside that there are 5 widgets, separate widgets like a size box, a separator, a spacer, a center, a text, whatever widgets that you use. Consider there are 5 widgets. So when you do like this, it returns 5 widgets from this function rather than returning 1 widget. Why? Because you are just initializing the widget class. Just consider as a widget class, normal class that you are returning. And that multiplies with 10,000, so it's 50,000 widgets you're trying to render. Just consider the amount of memory will be used with the 50,000 methods. So what is the solution? So you have to change this method. Instead, convert it to a widget. Okay, convert it to a small widget. Like instead of making a widget method, convert it to a widget class. Call it primary button, and do all your operations there. Now, what is the difference between these two? So the difference is the build method, right? Yes, please come. So the difference is the build method. When you are returning this, it doesn't give you the build method. It just gives you the widget class. It's just giving you the class. Because it has multiple 5 classes, it just gives you the 5 classes. But when you do with a widget, it has the stateful and stateless widget methods. And it does have the build method. So the build method is optimized in a way that it decides whether to render right now or not. Okay. So when you are returning a widget class, inside that there are 5 widgets rendering, it's just a single class. It's single widget. Why? Because other 5 widgets will be decided when that widget is going to build it. So instead of 50,000, now you are back to 10,000. So you already reduce 40,000 widgets in this simple example, right? So always try to avoid this kind of methods that gives you the static widgets returns, right? Next is animation builder. So sometimes you have to do animations. So sometimes what we do is create a complex widget and make it in animate way that UI looks good. And what we do generally, so generally we create animation for builder and we give it some value here, we give the widget here, everything. But here we are creating a mistake. Why? Because this child can render this widget again. Okay, I've taken this example from a real example only. So this list view, whenever you're trying to rotate it, consider that 100 frames will be rotated, okay, and the 100 frames will take a new widget every time. And that's why you are rendering 100 widgets for that 100 frame animation. So what's the solution? So solution is you already have a children as input parameter on this build method. Pass that children directly. Why? Because whenever you have this animation builder right there, you already have given some data about the child. There is a child property here. I have not included this in a slideshow. There is a child property where you can design your child. So it takes the same child and just animate it. So it is much faster and much better animation and smooth on memory too. Okay. Then large images. This is the biggest challenge I face with every fresher developer when they are doing some designing. Consider that I have to design this much small image on my UI. Okay, this is small portrait. Consider that a user's list that you have to show the photos. A normal size of photo will be 100 by 100 pixel or maximum 200 by 200 pixels on a device, right? But when I encountered with a junior that he was doing some operation on this kind of thing, and he showed me that this is not working at optimized way, like this is lagging a lot. There is nothing much, but still it is lagging. What I did first, I just opened this image. And when I opened this image, just look at the resolution there. It's 3000 by 2000. And what is the image size? It's 2.84 MB. So consider that you are showing 100 items in a list. Your 100 into 2.84, like consider 3 MB at the moment. So it's 300 MB processing is ongoing on the thread. Now Flutter is smart enough to do some compressions. It doesn't render this image as whole, like it compresses but to do compression, it has to do some processing, right? So again, you are making impact on memory. So how to deal with those scenarios? So only use that much image size which is the most or the highest resolution required. For example, you are designing a 100 by 100 pixel image view, right? Just consider that in Android it's double access dpi, triple access dpi. So it's access dpi just multiplied by 4, 3, like that. So even though you are using super AMOLED displays, OLED displays, whatever display you are using, it can't be more than 5 times than your actual size. So your 100 pixel image will be rendered there 500 pixel. So your maximum size will be 500. But even if you render 300 or 400 pixels image there, it works fine. It doesn't make much difference on user side. But it will definitely save a lot of processing at your end. You can use many online tools that can compress your PNG files. Okay, there are many like Tiny PNG. There are many other PNG services available that you can use to compress those files. So why it is important? So if you compress any PNG file, it generally compress at least 40% to 50% of your image. So you are ultimately saving half of your size of image assets, right? That's the important thing for you to consider whenever you are developing an app which has lot of images. It's okay if you're rendering from internet, but there also you need to keep some small images of your user's photo on server. Don't load the 5 MB photo that I have clicked from my iPhone. Okay, if I click on an iPhone or Samsung devices, there are 5, 6 MB photos. If you load that 5, 6 MB photo directly, it takes download time. You are using users' internet data. You are using users' phone data. You are using users' time too. So a lot of wastage. Okay. SetState. This is the most underrated method and the most used method, I can say. People use it as they want. Okay, if something is coming free, use it anyway. So this is like that. This method is given to you in a free way. Whenever you want to change some state, call it SetState. This is the biggest mistake whenever I see anyone's code. SetState is called 100 times in a single flow. Yeah, this is the common thing that everyone has to do. So how to use it efficiently? That's the most important point. There are few topics that I have searched over internet and found few because I have tried few. I have included those two. So keep your widget small. Now what is this? How it is related with the SetState? So SetState, what it does? SetState means, so how first Flutter works you to understand. Whoever new to Flutter, just understand that how Flutter works. Consider there is a username that you want to display. There is a text that says hi, whatever the username is. Say hi Chintan. Okay. Now, whenever user changes the name in the edit box, you have to change that widget. Consider that simple example, right? I am changing Chintan to Manan, then it should update the widget to Manan. Now that widget will be dependent on some state of a variable, username. Okay, so whatever the username state will be, the state will be of that widget. So if I change the state of username, the widget will be re-render. Simple enough to understand? Everyone clear on this? Okay, so now if I call it in this way, then what will happen? So when I do this, Flutter restart whole flow and start this method. So set state, you have to use the set state to let the Flutter know that the state is changed. Now please re-render for me. So this is for that. Now consider you have a complex UI on your screen and you just want to change that name. There is a lot of things available on the screen, and there's a top left corner you are showing welcome Chintan on the home screen, right? Now all other things are there, already loaded, perfectly working fine. Now you want to just change the name there. Will you do SetSet directly? Will re-render whole screen. Unnecessary re-rendering of whole widget. So how will you avoid it? So keep your widget small. What does that mean? Just think of a whole screen in simple small components. And all those components can be a widget, if possible, most of the time. If we can reuse a widget, just downgrade it to a smaller widget. If it can be further divided to a reusable widget that can use another widget, just re-downgrade it to another widget. Now how you can decide those things, like how many times I have to reduce that. So there are few parameters that I can say from my experience is just consider whether that state is going to change or not. Consider that the name is going to change, right? So I have to create it in a way that only that part will be changed. So that should be a separate widget that just renders that dynamic part. If there is a company icon there, or there is a logo there, there is some static images there, they are not going to change, just keep it small and static. Yeah, use const word. I will coming to that point. So just keep it separate. It doesn't have to be in any part, but whatever the part is going to change dynamically a lot of time, it should be in a separate state, a separate widget. And then call that SetState method for that widget only. Don't call it for everything, right? Second is don't call SetState in build methods. Now, I have seen a lot of people doing a lot of code on build method, right? I'm coming to that point later, but SetState is not meant to be done on build method. So build method, how many times is it called? So build methods are called whenever there is a frame rendering going on. So just consider that in a 10 second of time, if your app is rendered 100 times, considering that some frames are idle and you don't have to do any work on that thread. So considering that in 10 seconds, 100 frames are rendering, that build method will be called 100 times. Whatever operation you do inside the build method will be called 100 times and will be doing that memory operation 100 times. So don't do SetState in build methods. Please try to avoid it as much as possible, right? Next is don't call SetState in init state method. Now what init states? If you work on, have you worked on Android development? Anyone? Okay, few. Okay, so let me give you a simple example. So init state is whenever you want to start something, just to render some UI. This is the first method will be called. Like please init your state, then I will do the rendering. Okay, this is the normal terminology of init state. I will init the state as you describe. I will do my stuff also, but let me know what else you have to do. Like for example, you have to display the username on top. You are giving that this username variable has this name, right? So this is the init state part. Now when you call this, do some coding in init state, the next part will be the build method. Okay, the build method is already going to be called after the init state because you have declared that this is my initial state. Please render the UI in that way, right? So if you call it again SetState on the init method, it doesn't make any sense. Even though it may not work, it may give you crash as well. But this is the main problem. Like people try to do SetState in init method and build methods. That's the biggest mistake you can do because you are trying to do more and more work which is not necessary, right? Second is SetState and SetState are equal. Now this is the SetState is block. Sadly, I hard to believe this. I've had impression that these were the two different things. I always give people advice that use it in this way, use it not in this way. But when I came to know about this truth, I am not 100% that this is a fact. But after reading certain things, after trying out some code, I came to a conclusion that this doesn't make any sense. Okay, what is that? So consider that you have to update your text. So you are doing the SetSet block, right? You are trying hello inside the SetSet block. This is equivalent if you do this above it and then do the SetSet. Hardly it's true. I still can't believe it. It's true. It's hard to believe, but it's true. So then why Flutter has given this structure even? Like if we have to do it in that way, then why it is given that structure? So this block is asynchronous block. If you see, there is a method callback. So it's not just simple block that it's normal function. It's a callback async function. So whenever whatever do, it does asynchronously, and then it updates the UI. So keep it set as much as low as possible. So this is the part of it. So if you do this, then whatever code next is there, it can be triggered directly without doing this. So use it smartly. Like whatever the next line is, it will first execute. It will start executing this, but the first response will be maybe of the following line if there is too much work here, right? And that's my last point is keep SetState light. Do as much as less operation you want to do, and do as many as time as you can reduce the SetSet call as many as time possible. Don't call it SetSet time as you require, okay? And keep it a light that it just flies away. Okay. Okay. Control build cost. This is I have taken this sentence from Flutter's website only. So as I mentioned that a lot of people are doing a lot of code on build methods. I came to an example that the UI was working perfectly. My developer was working with me, and she told me that suddenly the UI starts lagging. I said I have tested the app. How it is lagging right now? Because we have done a lot of testing there at that time. I came to her PC and I just checked. There was no new requirement of some computation she has to do, and she put it under the build method. So like this. So when the build method starts, she was doing some operations, and then it was returning the build method. So now consider that how many times build method will be called. I already explained. Just consider that whatever the expensive function you are calling there, it will be called those many times. And we just shifted it to init state and just work fine. So this much small change can make your app much efficient. Okay. These are the basic mistakes that we can do. Now let's go to advanced tips, some basic advanced tips. Debug print. Okay, now debug print, you will say that it's only work on debug, right? By the name it suggests. There is a print method that you do for logging if you want to log something. Debug print is just for the debugging purpose only. Why it is? Because it loads all the text that is cut by the normal print method. But it will also run on the production. So what you can do, you can put some checks there to only run on the production. So when we came to an example that recently only, that when we were calling some print statement and logging some large JSON amount, it was lagging on production. It was just a print statement that was lagging the whole app, right? So avoid to do that. If you really want to make a lot of debug statements, create your own structure that only runs on the debug part. Whenever you make a production release app, it doesn't run that. Did update widget. So it's a method that been called when the widget is about to update or which just updated, and you want to do some more states related operation, use that method. I'm not going to in detail much about it, but you can explore more about it. Use const whenever possible. If you see, Android Studio always gives you the warning that use const. Why it's const? Because the Flutter SDK is designed in a way that when something is const, it doesn't use memory to those things. It just do it once and then set. Right? So if it's a constant, it's not going to change. Use the const keyword as always. Use static wherever possible. When there is a few things, for example, this timestamp widget that prints just time every time I render on a list. It has date format objects. So when you're rendering 1,000 items of timestamp, it just takes 3,000 date format objects. Just change it to static. It will only take one object. 3 objects. So you are reducing from 3,000 to only 3 objects, right? List view, it's okay to use list view. I'm not against of using list view. So list view means normal listing, but when you have lot of asynchronous processing ongoing on a list, there is a large list you are to render. So what you have to do is just use the list view builder. that will help you to reduce it. It will render only as much as required. Okay, and this is about clipping rectangle. Don't use clipping tools as you required. If you can use it with the properties like border radius and everything, just try to do that, right? Await compute. So whenever there is some complex operation you have to do, mathematical operation or some complex computing you have to do on programming, use compute function and await it. So it doesn't work on main thread or UI thread, it works on the separate thread. Okay, I will give you some simple example. Like for example, I have to print the Fibonacci series now up to 500 paces and I have to show progress bar. But if I do it on a normal thread, then it will start lagging. So what you have to do is you have to change it to await compute and just wrap it along with it. So it will only compute it on a separate thread and you can still showing your progress bar there. Okay, and some pro tips. I'm not going into much detail now because there are no professional much here, but I'm going to topics that you can explore more later. Solve warnings. This is I always ask my developers to do. Try to keep as much as less warnings on your code, even though it's not much useful. There are two reasons. One is the IDE works faster because there are less things to check as a link checks. So even when you're working on ROLM, it's work fine. Okay, so that's the one reason. Second reason, if they are giving some warning, that should be some reason behind it. How to understand the reason? Sometimes okay to avoid that because it's doesn't relevant with your scenario. Sometimes you can avoid it, but try to solve as many warnings as you can. I always try to keep less than 50 warnings in a code. That's my preference. And you can use performance overlay. It shows you some overlay there on the top of your app when you run the profiler from the Android Studio. Wherever you see spike, this is about showing it. Like this is the memory issue, you have to fix it. So this is about it. You can explore more because you are not professional developer. So going much into detail right now doesn't make any sense. Dev tools, there are multiple dev tools available built in Android Studio. You can use it to check your app size, you can check the memory uses, the network call size, many things are available there. There are 4 or 5 performance tools available. You can use it if you want to go in deeper in that, right? And if you just want to analyze your APK size, these are the simplest command. Whenever you build APK, just analyze size. Now this will create a different type of APK and apps that won't be able to publish on the store. This is just for your analyzing purpose that you can see a chart that okay, this many things are taking this much memory on your app. Right? You can reduce that. Mostly it can be assets or some classes that you can remove from your code. And this is the references I have taken. I would like you go to all these references, especially by the Philip Harasek. He's a Flutter advocate at Google, and he has done some good examples. I have taken many examples from his example only. Don't worry, I will share the slides, so it's okay. You can have it later on as well. That's all from my side for now. I would like to conclude more on Q&A. I hope you guys have found some information that you can use it to check your code now. But as Philip has said in one video that don't optimize because you just want to optimize. Only optimize whenever it is required. But I will little bit differ for that statement. For me, performance is always a topmost priority. I always discuss this with my junior. You can run 1000 loop, empty loop easily on any phone, right? If you run any 1000 loop and phone, user won't be going to notice, right? There is a minor millisecond gap. Should you do that? No, right? Just empty 1000 loop, why should you do that? Then why should waste other milliseconds too? That's my answer to those questions. So that's all from my side. More I will answer based on your questions.